Hello there, welcome back to our channel. I hope you're ready. With no delay, let's get started. So, we've discussed how the reality we perceive is dual, relative, and partial, finite. We call this reality as relative reality. We also talked about the fact that there is an absolute reality, a reality that we don't perceive but which exists, and which makes it possible for relative reality to take shape. Absolute reality is infinite and has no form, no quality. The reason absolute reality has no form and no quality is that it is infinite. It's very difficult to talk about infinity. It's very difficult to think of something infinite in our finite mind, but I will do my best to express it as clearly as possible. Infinity has no limit by definition. When I think of something as infinite, the mind constrains us to understand what infinity really means. The most common example is space. When we think of something as infinity, the mind brings space as an example, but space is only one dimension of infinity. Infinity with a capital I means infinite on infinite dimensions. This is what it really means to be infinite. Nothing constrains you, nothing limits you to be infinite only in length, width, and height. Infinite on infinite dimensions means to be infinite in the dimension of time, of space, in the dimension of colors, sounds, love, power, intelligence, will, etc. As I said last time, infinity has many facets. Infinity is the universe, it is God, it is love, and so on. God is almighty, all powerful, all knowing, omnipresent. Sound familiar? God is therefore infinite. In relative reality, God is seen from many perspectives. People have understood and named it in many forms: Jesus, Brahman, Buddha, Allah, etc. Thus, several religions were formed. There is a very good analogy for all these religions and how they were formed. Is the analogy of the elephant discovered by four blind men. The four blind men, having never encountered an elephant before, are touching it, trying to understand and describe this new phenomenon. One of them puts his hand on the trunk and thinks it is a snake. Another examines one of the elephant's leg and says it's a tree. The third finds the elephant's tail and declares it to be a rope. And the fourth blind man, after discovering the side of the elephant, comes to the conclusion that it is actually a wall. In his blindness, each describes the same thing, an elephant, yet each does it in a totally different way. Thus, each religion sees only a small part of God and is blind when it comes to the whole God. God is not constrained by any religion, does not belong to or limit itself to any religion. God is the whole universe. God is infinite, and for this reason, He can create an infinity or finite forms. But we will discuss God in more detail another time. Turning to the other facets of God, the infinity, it contains absolutely everything that exists. By definition, the infinite is all that exists, and there is nothing beyond it that limits it. That being said, there is only one infinity. There cannot be two infinities because they would merge with each other and become one. So, if there is only one infinity, it means that it is whole. Here are the definitions of the whole from Oxford Languages Dictionary. Entire, all of something, an unbroken or undamaged state, in one piece, a thing that it is complete in itself. These definitions clearly reflect how infinity exists. Because the universe is infinite, it is whole, it is complete, it is one power, it is sovereign. And if it is whole, it means that it cannot truly separate from itself. The universe has the ability to split into infinite finite parts, but still be whole. We are talking about a paradox. The greatest paradox that exists is infinity itself. Infinity is the snake eating its own tail. A paradox is a seemingly absurd or contradictory statement or proposition which, when investigated, may prove to be well founded or true. Infinity is described by infinite finite parts and more. The infinite is divided into infinite finite parts, but still it is every finite part, so it remains whole. The infinite is conscious, the universe, God, is infinitely conscious. So, when we think of ourselves as separate parts of consciousness of the universe, we have a blind spot in our thinking. When we think of ourselves as separate forms of the infinite, we miss the essence of the cosmic truth, because nothing in the universe can be separated from the universe. This means that every finite part is actually infinite. If infinity is God, then every form that exists in the universe is God. God, being infinite, has the power to seemingly take all its power and to delude itself. This creates the cosmic game called life. God is not in each one of us. God is each one of us, is every form that exists. Infinity has the capacity to manifest itself in appearance as finite. Although to us as humans it appears that everything around us is different and separate from us, the truth is that only in appearance things appear to be separate, and in reality, I am not different from you. I am not different from a cat, a tree, a wall. The reason why we can't realize this is that we think by dual logic, because our mind is finite, and as I've explained, everything finite is dual and relative. The very life we perceive, apparently everything that exists has a beginning and an end. Enlightenment is the process by which we begin to realize that everything around us, including ourselves, is infinity. Step by step, we begin to realize that nothing can exist without the infinite. We begin to realize that the finite thing cannot exist without the infinite. It is like saying that there are apples without trees. Infinity is what makes it possible for anything finite to exist, not the other way around. Infinity has infinite power, so that it can create the illusion that finite things exist. The infinite is so intelligent that it has created the illusion of relative life, and we as humans enjoy the everyday world, study it and wonder at it, and cannot get to the bottom of it logically. Because God is infinite, it created a perfect universe. If God is infinitely intelligent and conscious and kind and loving, how could it have created a universe that is flawed? Infinity created the perfect world. The infinite created every finite part perfectly. Every form that exists is perfect as it is. Everything that happens for a reason and is perfect because it happens. And we will ask ourselves, how can that be perfect? How can the act of killing be perfect? How is it possible for war to be a perfect act? How is it possible for disease, cancer, to be perfect? How is it possible for violence to be a perfect act? Of course, in appearance, all of the above and many others are bad and negative things. But what I have explained by duality and its relativity is that everything that exists is relative. That is, it depends on the perspective from which you look at it. For example, one explanation for people's brutal acts or suffering is reincarnation. What we gave in a previous life will come back to us. Another explanation is that the universe being infinite, it must contain absolutely everything that can exist. Bad things, good things, and everything in between. But to the universe, the things we as humans call as bad are not bad to it. Infinity is neutral. It does not take sides with good things, because for it, all things are good, even the things we as humans see as bad. When I said that the infinite created the perfect world out of absolute love, I was referring to the fact that it must create all the things it can create. That is what it means to be absolutely loving. We have the wrong idea about love. We think it is only love in family, partners, pets, etc. But love, at its highest level, is the love of infinity. and the love of infinity is life itself. We think the reality we experience is matter, but the reality we experience is the love of the infinite, materialized. Infinity created the universe out of love, and because the love of infinity has no limits, it cannot be constrained to only the things we as humans see as good. Infinity must be infinite in such a way that it has only one constraint, that of being infinite. As I said, infinity is a paradox that cannot be completely understood by the mind, it can be experienced. We can connect with the infinite, but we can only understand it logically up to a point. The mind can perceive it as far as it has the capacity, because it is finite. Further, the soul can connect with the infinite and experience it, specifically, to remember who it really is, namely, the infinite, God. The more you become enlightened, the more the ego, the mind, evolves and diminishes and makes way for the soul to take over. Or we can say that the ego becomes more and more God. The point is that, as I said, the infinite cannot be separated from itself, except in appearance. In reality, anything that exists in everyday life is no different from anything else because it is all infinity. For example, a book is no different from a man is no different from a car is no different from an animal, and so on. This is true because every form we perceive is actually the infinite. We just don't realize it because we only perceive finite forms. In order to be able to understand that all around us and we ourselves are the infinite God, we need an insight. An insight is like a memory that emerges from within. The insight is something we have always known, but it is something we have not remembered until now. Infinity observes itself through everyday life. That is to say, when we look in any direction and observe an object, what actually happens is that the infinite observes itself. To be able to realize, to remember the truth that we are God, the infinite, we need to begin to feel that there is more to life than what it is in appearance. The moment we feel that life has a deeper meaning than we perceive through its appearances, we begin to search for that meaning, that truth of life. We begin to remember and connect with the infinite. Haven't you ever wondered how is it possible that you are always in the center of your life? Always when you look around, it seems that you are the center of the world, that the world revolves around you. The reason you are the center is because you are the infinite. You give life to your life. Everything starts from you in infinite directions. If you leave this body, life disappears. You think that life will go on for those around you without you, but you don't understand that you are God, experience your human life. We'll talk about God, about you, in the next episode. Until then, be safe.